You feel the rumble in your hand. You can mic up the neck and get tone out of the neck when you're. This is technically, this is session number 4 along this leg of the tour. This is the on-tour series from Long and McQuade. And the guitars, so yeah, as Dave was saying, a batch of really awesome guitars that has slowly changed throughout the tour as well. Some have been sold, some have been added to, but the guitars have been touring across Ontario. So we started in Canada a few weeks ago in the Ottawa area, went down to Kingston, headed up to Peterborough, and here we are in Pickering. Next week, heading to Markham, and then down to Mississauga, and over to Brantford, and you know, things will change as we go. Some guitars will stay, some will go, and we'll go from there. But yeah, so this is a really cool opportunity. As Dave was saying, my name is Chris Gauthier. I work for Yorkville Sound, and Yorkville is a Canadian distributor for Gibson in Canada, and we have been since 1986. And yeah, so I'm just gonna start by going through, if you guys don't mind, I'm gonna go through a little bit of a history of Gibson, maker of all things. He just liked to carve wood. That was like one of his hobbies, if you will. And one of his friends asked him to carve a mandolin because mandolins were the choice instrument at the time for a small format travel instrument. It was a mandolin. That's just what was being played at the time. And like I said, one of his friends asked him to carve him a mandolin top and build a mandolin for him. So he did, and it turned out really awesome. Other friends and family started asking him to do that more and more, and it became his main kind of a project. But Orville wasn't really a businessman, so with some help, he did open proper Gibson Mandolins company in Kalamazoo, Michigan. That was in 1902. Having trouble with the business part of it, he ended up selling his business to the couple people that he was working with, couple business partners that he was working with, and those guys took over the business. And Orville sadly didn't end up living for too much longer. He was in a mental hospital in upstate New York and sort of succumbed to some illnesses in the 50s, I believe it was. So guitars were born at this point in time. You've heard that term maybe before, electric Spanish, and that is what these are, ES guitars. They're archtop, hollow bodies and semi-hollow bodies with F-holes. They launched this guitar right here, this style of guitar right here in 1958 is the first year of the actual ES 335. That one there's a 59 per se, but 1958 is when they launched that. Semi-hollow means, so there's hollow bodies and semi-hollow bodies. A semi-hollow body means that there is a solid block of maple running right down through the body, and then these are almost empty hollow wings on each side. They say that fully hollow bodies give you a different tone, different sound, different resonance altogether, but they can be sort of more susceptible to feedback. So the guitars with a solid block down the center are a little more feedback controlled, basically, and they have more sustain. So, moving on, we're in the 1950s now. So, the 1950s, Ted McCarty was the president of the company. And Ted McCarty was one of the most influential designers and innovators at the time as well. This is around the point in time when they started working with Gibson and Epiphone at the time, who was a competitor of theirs, started working with Les Paul. Maybe you've heard of that guy. Les Paul was synonymous not only with making his own awesome guitars through them, but he was the first guy to use, first person to use and create multi-track recording. There's all kinds of amazing, innovative designs that Les was involved in with music altogether. So he was an important guy to have on your team. The first Les Paul guitar was an Epiphone guitar, of all things, not a Gibson, and it was called the Log. Maybe we've seen pictures of that. In a little bit, I've got a very cool Epiphone book that's going to be one of the prizes in the giveaways, so stay tuned and you'll learn more about that, and you'll see a picture of the Log. That's right, I forgot to mention. stick around for the end of the presentation because we're going to do some questions and you can win some awesome prizes. Gibson created the two-pneumatic bridge system, introduced in 1956. So that is this style of a bridge system that allows you to individually intonate each string. Makes it better for tuning and so forth and getting the proper pitch. If you look at guitar like so, this guy right here, you're going to notice that it has a wraparound tailpiece. So there is no bridge, essentially. It's just a tailpiece. That's fine. You can adjust the height. You can't really adjust much this way, the length of it. You can adjust the pitch and the height. But this design allowed you to actually individually intonate each string and tune it properly. Some other modern era, newer aged models that were introduced were the Firebird. We don't have one here tonight, but is there one on the wall? Yes, there is. It's an Epiphone Firebird hanging up there on the right. The EBO bass, so that's like an SG bass, of course. That's a modern era guitar. And the ES330. This is when they took this design, the ES335, and this is when they fully hollowed out that and put P90 pickups in there. Oh, I forgot to mention, yeah, a humbucker pickup is two single coil pickups wired together. I guess you guys know that. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. And that's, by doing that process, that's what bucks the hum. In 1974, Gibson was taken over by a South American brewing conglomerate called ECL and was run by Norland Industries, one of their branches. When this happened in 1976, they actually closed the Kalamazoo, Michigan factory, moved everything, all their production in Nashville, which kind of makes sense because Nashville, Tennessee is Music City after all. The old story goes that they sent 3 flatbed trailers up to Kalamazoo, Michigan. They were told to load up as much machinery as they possibly could fit in and throw the rest in the lake behind the plant. Apparently they did that, and then after they drove away, some disgruntled former employees fished out the equipment out of the lake, cleaned it all off, and used it to start their own guitar company, which is still making guitars today, called Heritage Guitar Company. So that's what they say. I wonder how well those machines worked after being in the lake. Well, who knows? I guess good enough to make Heritage. During this period, when they were building in Nashville only and when they moved to Nashville, it was another time of modernization and wanting to move ahead with all kinds of wacky, new, crazy designs. But one thing that did suffer somewhat was the acoustic division, their acoustic guitar division. They found that the climate in Nashville was just too humid for building the proper steel string guitars that they wanted to build. And they ended up sort of cutting some corners in result to try and fix the problem and lower the price point, and so some product did suffer. During that period, a few different things happened that were sort of difficult towards the production of the guitars, leading them into bankruptcy for the first time. And in a result, Henry Jeskowitz and Dave Berryman, a couple of lawyers, purchased Gibson out of bankruptcy, saved them out of bankruptcy to revive the historic brand. And the purchase price at the time was $5 million, and their current worth is over $100 million. So just a relevant change there. But in 1986 is when this happened. This is when Henry and Dave purchased Gibson out of bankruptcy to bring back the brand. And that's when we took on distribution at Yorkville, right here in, at that time we were in Scarborough, I believe, and we've been carrying the brand in Canada ever since. The story goes there, Jack Long says that Henry Jeskowitz approached him because when he was a little kid, his very first guitar amp was a Trainer guitar amp. So he wanted us to carry the brand in Canada, which is pretty cool. Nice little bit of history there. 100% handcrafted and made in the USA. Everything that says Gibson on it is made in America. There was one time when Gibson purchased, oh my goodness, the Newfoundland Guitar Company. Why does it slipping my mind. And they built acoustic guitars in Newfoundland.
No.
Garrison, thanks Dave. Slip the old brain there. Yes, Garrison Guitars in St. John's, Newfoundland. So they bought that company, and that was the one and only time that Gibson made Gibson branded instruments outside of the US. So it's kind of cool. If you see those guitars out there in the market, try and grab one because they're very collectible. They made some Gibson guitars. They're branded Gibson. They were called the Song Maker series, if you see them out there. Anyway, so, yeah, handcrafted in the USA, so that's a big part of it. The angled headstock. You notice that every single Gibson has a back-angled headstock. And they claim that one of the reasons they do that is to put more down pressure on the break angle of the strings. So the more pressure you have on a break angle for the string, you're going to get more sustain and more tone out of the body and out of the wood itself. If it just sort of skims across the nut into the headstock or into a string tree, then it may not have as much downward pressure tone, is one of the things that Gibson claims. Also noted, Gibson uses a 24 3/4 inch scale length instead of the industry standard 25.5 inch scale length. Gibson does it because of the different harmonic range they learned about in the 1930s. And the angled headstock helps with that as well. Set neck. This is one of the coolest features that personally I really enjoy. If you look at every Gibson guitar, the neck itself is officially set into the body of the guitar. So, inside the guitar is a cavity that will house the tenon that juts out from the bottom of the neck, creating a firm inserted joint like that. A lot of other companies may bolt on their necks, which is fine, that's great, but it's not as much craftsmanship involved in fitting a neck into the guitar. So what they really want to do there is join that neck with that body. This is why when they do fit it, so first of all, it'll be CNC'd, cut properly, but to actually make it fit really perfectly, they hand chisel. I've seen them do it, hand chisel so that the two pieces marry together. And then they use hot hide glue, or a fish emulsion glue. This type of glue, once it hardens, it almost crystallizes and makes pulls the fibers from each side into each other and binds them together, kind of like when you have a broken bone and your bone will heal itself. That's what happens with the hide glue. So this is all in effort to make the instrument all one, so there isn't a separate neck and a separate body, so that when you do strum, you feel the rumble in your hand. You can mic up the neck and get tone out of the neck when you're recording. Like the wood is part of the neck is part of the instrument, not just the tool to use the pitch, like to change the pitch. So nitrocellulose finish is probably one of the most important aspects of a Gibson guitar. Martin uses it as well on their higher end instruments. Fender does on some of the higher end instruments as well. But nitrocellulose finish is a very old style of a lacquer that allows the wood to move. That's the whole idea. It's generally thin and allows the wood to move and breathe and change and do what it does. This does create some issues with cracking and scratches and maybe little burn marks, and the nitro doesn't react, or sorry, it overreacts to different guitar stands or cases and whatnot, so it's more susceptible to damage, in other words. But ultimately, the nitro is going to allow your guitar to move and change over time. This guitar is a perfect example of, you can see how wide those grains are. In between each grain line, the fibers are in there of the wood, and those fibers is the loosest part of the wood, and they'll vibrate and move with your strumming and with your playing, and then they settle in at the right frequency. That all can't happen if you use a very plasticky finish. So that's why you need something that's a little more organic and that will allow the wood to do that. That's how the guitar is going to sound the best over time. Oops.
Is that where you get the almond smell from?
That's exactly where it smells. That's exactly what it comes from. Nitro smells like that. It's actually quite
chocolate.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a little overwhelming though. I was down there one time with a few of our guys, and one of the guys actually passed out because of the overwhelming smell of it, that he wasn't used to it. So it can be pretty strong. So you don't want to use just any polish on your guitar. You want to use nitro-friendly polish. The pickups they're using are all hand-wired, right in their own factory. The strings they're using, all their own strings that they make in their factory. And they use the top-notch, most historically proven and tested components as well. So orange drop capacitors and so on and so forth. Brendan, go. What are some other amazing parts that are used in these?
500K pots, Clusin tuners.
Yeah, man. Top-notch stuff. That just about says it all.